Hey, good morning or afternoon or evening or whenever you're listening to this. It could be any day. The miracle of the podcast world, right? But we are certainly glad that you are joining us through our journey through Scripture. My name's Philip. I'm pastor of Journey here in Elgin, Texas, and we are continuing our walk through the Bible. We're in Exodus today. We're going to go through Exodus chapter 16 through 18. So if you want to hit pause and want to go and read that, I'd encourage you to do that and then come back and join us. All right. So Exodus chapter 16, if you remember, we talked about the crossing of the Red Sea and the people beginning their journey now from crossing the Red Sea to Mount Sinai. And on the way, one of the constant things that we see are obstacles. We're going to see constant obstacles coming from the people. We've obviously already seen those obstacles before. We talked a little bit about it at the end of chapter 15 as well, but there's difficulties that are going to arise, and it's important for us to remember, and I think there's a bigger picture here. This is God's people that he has chosen to bring out of captivity, bringing them back to the promised land, yet they continue to encounter unpleasant situations, difficulties, some of their own choosing, and some just because that's just the nature of life. And I think that's an important thing that we can never forget is that life is not easy. Life is not fair. Life has challenges. There is nothing that's going to change that. You can be walking in God's perfect path for you, right? And you're still going to experience challenges and difficulties. We live in a world that is fallen, a world that is impacted by sin. And it is vital that we understand that. Not so that we get frustrated and become negative, but so that we understand that God is not a God who promises to take away all the obstacles, but he is a God who promises to help us overcome them. And that is a very different perspective, because if you think that following God is going to lead to removing obstacles in your life, eventually you're going to give up on God because he never promises that. So you're always going to experience challenges and difficulties. So see that. We see the people experiencing those difficulties and those challenges. At the end of chapter 15, they had to drink water that was bitter, and they didn't like that. So God gave them some Splenda to sweeten up the water, and it made it taste a lot better. And now they're continuing on, and they start to question, "Hey, what are we going to eat?" Which, granted, is a reasonable concern, right? And again, but they start grumbling against Moses and grumbling against God. It says, and then they pull this again. There in chapter 16, verse 3 says, "If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us into this desert to starve the entire assembly to death." Man, how dramatic. I mean, just over the top, right? And it's like, okay, so you're looking back and you're forgetting how you were beaten and forced into hard labor because you got to sit around with pots of meat, right? Which probably wasn't even true, but it is so easy for us to get caught into that grumbling attitude. And so we just think everything is bad about our current situation. And all of a sudden, things look rosy in our past when we were actually going through it. They were frustrating too. And it's important for us to recognize that. And our tendency is to be just like the people. So they are very frustrated. And God says this, it says, "In this way, I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions." So God is going to give them bread from heaven, but he's going to use it as a test. He's going to give them instructions that they are only supposed to gather enough for that day. And then on the last day of the week, they are to gather enough for 2 days because they do not gather on the first day of the week. Right. So the people are given these instructions, and it's really fascinating. This is one of those things I would love to be able to experience and wonder what this was like. But we talk about manna from heaven, right? And so that was the bread or the wafer type substance. We don't know exactly what it is. In fact, the word manna means, what is it? Which I love that. I love thinking of the people thinking about what are we going to call this? It's all of a sudden appearing as the dew on the grass, and someone just says, "Well, what is it?" And so they just start calling it, "What is it?" That's what manna means. So they have the manna from heaven, and then they also have quail, but it will spoil if they gather too much. So if they go against what God has called them to do, it's going to spoil, which maybe there's a lesson a lesson there that we can learn, that God provides us all that we need, right? And we can be content with what God has provided for us. And so God sends the manna, and each day they have manna and quail, and they have that for the next 40 years. So whenever you have hamburgers or you have pizza for the fourth time in a week, maybe realize, you could have it for 40 straight years. So let's be thankful for the diversity of food that we have today. So we see again, of course, God is overcoming these challenges that the people are facing. Chapter 17 goes right into another frustrating time where the people don't have water. Again, remember they are crossing the desert. So you go from one place of water to the next. And so it was taking them a while to get to water. So the people are quarreling and they're grumbling and they're angry with Moses. Moses is scared that they're actually going to stone him. And so God calls Moses, says, take the staff. Remember the staff that you used to turn the Nile River into blood? Now I want you to use that same staff to strike the rock, and the rock poured forth water, and the people were able to drink. And I want to bring out one part of this chapter, chapter 17, there, verse 7. And it says, and he called the place Massah and Meribah, because the Israelites quarreled and because they tested the Lord, saying, is the Lord among us or not? And so those words, Massah and Meribah, mean to quarrel and to test. And what's happening here is we're seeing a slow maturing of the Israelite people. And right now they're still at a pretty immature stage where they basically, their view of God and their understanding of God, belief in God, trust in God is basically a what have you done for me lately belief. It's completely, it's kind of like a child's relationship with their parents, right? That a child, especially early on, right? Really, their relationship with their parent is based on what have you done for me? Have you provided for me? As our children start to get older, they'll throw a fit when they don't get what they want, right? Because they are viewing us as just that being that's there to provide for them. And so the people, that's kind of, they're in that process right now where that's what they view about God. And this is interesting because they have seen so many direct miracles from God. And yet, the moment they experience something that is unpleasant and they're not getting what they want, they immediately start arguing with God and putting God to the test. Hey, are you going to do something miraculous here? And there's a couple of thoughts I have about that. One, sometimes we get into the pattern today of wishing that we would see more miracles, right? We think, man, if I could just see the parting of the Red Sea, or if I could just, see God give manna from heaven, how awesome that would be. And I would believe in God that much more, right? It's a dangerous way of thinking because it doesn't work out that way. That's not human nature. Just experiencing miracles is not going to guarantee a belief and a trust in God. And in fact, as we mature in our faith in God, we shouldn't need to see miracles, right? That's what faith is about, right? It's not faith if you're basing it only in miracles, right? Because a miracle is something that you've seen, something tangible. Well, faith is something that is intangible. It's believing in something that you cannot see, right? And it's important for us to understand that and to allow our faith to mature to where we are not constantly arguing with God, putting God to the test, demanding miracles of God. And the reality is there are so many miracles going on around us that we just take them for granted. The miracle of conception, the miracle of birth, the miracle of creation is happening all the time. And we take that for granted, and we desire for there to be more. But even if we experience more, that doesn't always lead to a deeper faith. In fact, if we handle that in an immature way, it actually leads us to having a more immature faith, because we start viewing God as a "what have you done for me lately" God. And that's a danger for all of us. So the people are now receive water again. God has taken care of them again. Then we get to the end of chapter 17, and we see that they are attacked by another group of people, the Amalekites. Again, this is God's people. He's leading them out of slavery, and yet they're still being attacked. But God delivers them again. This is kind of interesting. You kind of get this picture that Moses is up on the ridge line, if you will, and down in the valley. The battle is raging. And as long as Moses's arms are raised, the Israelite people are winning. And as they fall down, they begin losing. And so you have this picture of people holding up Moses's arms. And all of that, it clearly says that's what's going on. But what is that pointing us towards? It's reminding us, as long as we are looking to God, as we are looking to Him, that is how we engage the battles around us, that we keep our eyes focused on Him. The moment we start lowering our guard and trying to do it on our own, the moment things can start going bad. And I think that's so important for you as you go through and face uncertainty in your life. Always keep your eyes focused on Him, looking up to Him. Don't get so consumed by the battle raging around you, but always be looking up to God, and He will give you the path through the battles. Then we get to chapter 18. The people are getting very close now to Mount Sinai. And Jethro, who is Moses' father-in-law, they are reunited, and it's really interesting. So the people are there. They're kind of having to work out how they go about interacting. How do they handle difficulties and challenges? And so Jethro comes up, who is a Midianite. So he is not a Jew, but yet he is a priest who now is recognizing that the Lord God is truly the one true God, right? So there in verse 9, it says, Jethro was delighted to hear about all the good things the Lord had done for Israel in rescuing them from the hand of the Egyptians. He said, "Praise be to the Lord, who rescued you from the hand of the Egyptians, and to Pharaoh, who rescued the people from the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all other gods, for he did this to those who had treated Israel arrogantly." So, right, even this Midianite is now recognizing who the one true God is. And then we have an interesting thing that happens. So Jethro sees what's going on. Moses is trying to kind of handle all the disputes of the people. Basically, Moses is trying to do it all, and he just can't do it. And so Jethro basically lays out, hey, here's a way that you can start managing all these problems. You need to appoint some different people, to be judges, to handle these disputes so that you don't have to handle all of them. Right. And one thing that's interesting, again, that we've talked about this before, that's a good reminder, is that yes, God is calling the people of Israel. They are His chosen people, but that doesn't mean that He doesn't care about the rest of the world. And the fact that a Midianite who become enemies of Israel, that they help Israel kind of develop this framework of justice and of judging, is quite incredible. And so we see that Jethro does that. And one thing that he brings out that I think is very important for us, whenever he's talking about selecting people to be judges, there in chapter 18, verse 21, says, "But select capable men from all the people, men who fear God, trustworthy, and who hate dishonest gain." Those are three very important characteristics that we should all strive for. That we fear God. We see that all the time, this respect for God, this understanding of the proper order of things, that God is creator, we are created, and that should put a natural fear that we have of God. So people that are leaders should have that within them, that they understand that it's not all about them. And by the way, as I'm reading this, I'm trying to think, when was the last time we've had strong leadership that fits these qualities in our secular world? And not a whole lot. But we see that, and we see that God desires for us to be fearful of Him, to be trustworthy, that we strive to tell the truth, to live by truth, and then who hate dishonest gain, right? Who aren't going to do things in order to benefit themselves. They're not going to cut the backroom deals, right? That people that are upright desire to do what God desires of us, and to follow and to live a godly lifestyle. That's something that we all need to, whether you're in a position of leadership or not. That is a basic understanding that we all need to be striving towards. So that brings us to the end of chapter 18. The next week, where I encourage you to read chapters 19 and 20. And really, we're going to talk about both of those chapters next week. And because it gets into the 10 Commandments, we're really going to dive into that a little bit. But so I encourage you for next time to read Genesis chapter 19 and 20, and we will see you